Feeding Fatty. I'm Roy.
I'm Terry.
So we are the podcast chronicling our journey through wellness, which includes diet, not being on a diet as much as just the food consumption portion, as well as exercise, mindset. We're really looking at a holistic approach. And as we've gotten deeper into this, we've added things to our repertoire, such as meditation and journaling and that other thing, the one that starts with the R.
Oh, Reiki. I like the way he says it, though. You say
it. No, I can't. Anyway.
He says Reiki. Reiki.
But intermittently, we do have guests, professionals in the field to come on, and that's what we have today. And Terry, I'm going to let you introduce Delia.
Yes, welcome to Delia McCabe. She is a PhD who shifted her research focus from clinical psychology to nutritional neuroscience upon discovering nutrition's critical in mental well-being while completing her master's. Delia's research into female stress has been published in a number of peer-reviewed journals. She is a regular featured expert in the media, and her two internationally available books are available in 4 languages. Using her background in psychology, combined with evidence-based nutritional neuroscience and neurological perspectives, Delia supports behavior change and stress resiliency within corporates and for individuals who want to optimize their brain health via online courses, workshops, and tailored events internationally. Delia, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Roy. So have I. Yeah. I've really been looking forward to this.
I'm going to merge to the right here. Probably regret this because we could talk for hours about personal stuff. But this is an interesting story, and this is one of the great things that keeps us podcasting, is because as a lot of we have had some internet issues, and we really haven't taped much over the last 6 weeks. But right before the crash, Delia came on and we talked to her and, getting things ready. And we even tried to come on and do the show. I think then it was we just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. And so anyway, we was like, all right, we'll talk to you when we get this fixed. In the meantime, she sends us an email, says, hey, what do you know? My husband's going to be in Austin and coming up to Dallas for a side trip. Maybe we can get together. So anyway, we got together with him. We had an awesome time. Did a little cowtown thing down in the stockyards, got some good barbecue, walked around for a little bit, and
made him get a Longhorn balloon hat.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we had to get him a balloon hat tied up. But anyway,
Michael was great.
I think the point is that just how lucky are we to be able to meet awesome guests from all around the world, and who'd have thought that somebody that we talked to in Australia would have a husband in Texas that we could go out and hang out with for a little bit.
Australia, that was so fun. Now we got to get her out.
Yeah, now that's our next step. Anyway, I digress, but I thought that's such an awesome story to tell that we don't interject that enough. I don't think that what great people that we meet from all around the world. It's just
and to be able
amazing.
To meet them face to face. Well, sort of indirectly.
Well, I think it's really funny because I've met you, and as you've said, the internet issues, and so we never got the podcast really done. But I haven't really met you in person, and there my husband has already met you guys. Yeah. I think it's hilarious and wonderful, and that's only because technology has allowed us to do this, and then of course some limited travel now.
Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I digress. I know we could be off on that for, like I said, for hours. And but anyway, we want to get to talking about nutrition, and I'll let y'all kind of had a roadmap already lined out. I'm not going to jump in. I'll let y'all lead into that.
Okay. Where would you like to start? You want to talk about improving? Well, on Lighter Brighter You, your website. You have an informative blog. Should we touch a little bit on that, improving cognitive function? You want to go there a little bit first?
I think, let me just explain how I got into nutritional neuroscience.
Yes, ma'am, that would be good.
I think a lot of people go, an ex-psychologist, what were you doing?
Oh
So
my gosh.
it was interesting for me because I was, and look, this is dating me because it was more than 25 years ago. I was busy finishing my master's in psych, and I was working with a group of really smart school kids who were really doing poorly at school. And my experimental group, these are the kids who were smart and doing poorly, I was doing an intervention with them because I was curious about the psychological variables that led to their underachievement. And I was looking at what I could do and say to help these children be focused and concentrate and study and make their parents and teachers breathe a sigh of relief. And I had a questionnaire that I gave to both the experimental group and the control group, who were the smart kids doing well. And I had a little bit of extra space on the questionnaire. And, fate is a very funny thing, and destiny, because in that space, I asked them a question. I said, what is your favorite food? And the answer was really astonishing because every single one of the children in the experimental group loved some form of junk food. And the children in my control group were the opposite. They were interested in Sunday lunch or, roast chicken and maybe veggies and salads and so on. They didn't focus on junk food. And it's very seldom in research that you come across such a clear distinction.
Yeah.
So I was really stuck because I couldn't really write that up into my thesis because it wasn't part of what I was looking at. I was looking at psychological variables, not nutritional physiological variables. So I wrote my thesis up, made a short mention of that, and then thought, well, I'm going to take a break now and examine this whole nutrition and the brain story because I was just about to have my daughter and I thought I'll take a bit of a break and check it out. And as I said, destiny and fate are weird things because after I dived into the subject, which 25 years ago was not a big subject, and there were only a few researchers around the world examining this, I realized that I didn't want to be a talking therapist anymore. I didn't want to look at ways to get people to change their lives when their brain wasn't functioning optimally. Because the bottom line is really very clear here, that thinking and behavior change and everything that we do between our ears happens across this huge network that's made up of cells and chemicals and membranes and molecules, all of which rely on lifestyle choices, primarily nutrition, to keep it all going. So I thought, no, I need to really check this out and see how it works. So I thought to myself, well, it'll take me a couple of months and I'll understand what this is all about.
Oh, no.
And 25 plus years later, here I am still learning. But I think what my mission is to explain to people that when their brain is functioning really well because it's well fed, it's a whole lot easier to live a good life because you make better decisions when a brain is functioning optimally. You're in a better mood. You think more clearly. You can be more creative. You have more energy naturally. And obviously, your brain ages really well, which is what we all want.
Yeah.
So that is my mission to explain to people. But the challenge has been, I'm basically teaching prevention, and most people want cure. Yeah. And the challenge with the brain is that it is functioning and trying to work optimally in suboptimum conditions for 95% of the population. And it does all these fancy and clever workarounds so that we only realize that the brain has degraded 20 to 25 years after the degradation starts.
Oh, wow.
Because of the brain's sophistication. So I'm really in a difficult spot because I'm teaching prevention and most people want cure.
All right.
But yeah, so that's basically the foundation of where I started and why I didn't want to be a talking therapist anymore. For me, I felt like it actually wasn't being honest because I wanted people to first nourish their brains optimally before they could actually start looking at behavior change.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And because people want to just throw pills at it. They just want something they want medication, whatever, to fix something. But if they look at it in a more holistic manner, and if they start now, it's never too late to start, right? I mean, they can start.
I know, that's what I was just sitting here thinking.
Oh.
Our boat might have sailed, so.
Yeah.
I think the most wonderful thing about the brain is that it is very receptive to when you start giving it what it needs. And we definitely now know that even people that have got Alzheimer's, if they follow a very strict protocol, can reverse some of the damage. So there are researchers out there who are investigating that at the forefront, but it is so much better to practice prevention.
Right.
And the sooner we do it, the better, because, when's the best time to start? Well, yesterday would have been better, but today is just as good.
Today's just as good.
Well, and that's the problem is that, I'll speak from me. The part of my problem is, when you're young and maybe some things are not right, your body adjusts and it's not a big deal. It doesn't drag you down like it does in your old age. So we tend to think, we're bulletproof, or I'll get that under control tomorrow. I got another day. And, I'm sure people that smoke a lot and drink a lot is like, I feel pretty good today. I can, smoke for a little bit longer, and then I promise I'll quit or drinking. And the reality is that, we need to take these practices from childhood, because I think something that you've mentioned, of course, but I think this too, is that nourishment is so important to the education of our children, and not only eating correctly, but the sad thing is in some cases eating at all. And, that kind of, the pandemic shined a really bright light on that, is that a lot of our school districts had to continuing to serve meals because that was where a lot of children, it's the only meal that they had. So I know that's a whole different subject, but, the reality is it's never really too early to get into this. And as parents, we should always be, a lot more conscious about our children and what they eat, because of the learning ability at that time, but also habits. And then that, we carry these bad habits into our age, to our older age.
And Delia knows, because she bred some very smart children, married a very smart man, and bred some very smart kids.
Well, I think that's a funny way of saying it, but I think it's kind of like fate was on their side as well, because as I discovered all these things, I started implementing them.
Yeah.
And so my children definitely benefited from that, because research suggests very clearly that your child will reach their genetic potential, their intellectual genetic potential, if the brain is optimally fed. If it's not optimally fed, then they can't reach that intellectual potential, which is a very sobering thought. And for parents that really care about their children, you want your child to maximize their capacity to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we do that is by making sure our brain functions well. So, Roy, your comment about habits, of course, if you start out, when you're young and you learn all these good habits about feeding your brain and your body really well, then you don't have to break bad habits later on.
Right.
It's breaking of the bad habits that becomes really challenging, because there's also some research to suggest that children's taste buds develop in their first 7 years of life.
Wow.
So if that's the case, then to change those taste buds when children are older than 7 becomes so much more challenging.
Yeah.
So it's really good to catch them when they're young, to just get them to embrace the kinds of food that support them across a lifetime.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute, about feeding our brains. I guess intuitively we just know preservatives, fast foods, I guess sometimes high carbs, high sugars, things like that are not good. But let's talk about what is good. I mean, what really nourishes our brain, and what feeds it to help us to maximize that?
In a nutshell.
It's a great question, Roy. Sorry, Terry.
I said in a nutshell, excuse me.
It's an important question, and it's obviously, the answer is huge. So I'm going to break it down into a few important things. And the first one is the fats and oils that we consume. Now, this was a big surprise to me, but when I discovered that 60% of the dry weight of the brain is made up of fat, I was really quite fascinated by that, because that meant to me that I had to find out a lot about fats and oils, because of that 60%, between 20 and 25% needs to come from a fat that our body cannot make. That means it's got to come from our diet. And if a nutrient has to come from our diet, it is called an essential nutrient. It means the body can't make it. So these are essential fatty acids. We're talking about omega-6 and omega-3, and we'll unpack them in a moment. The other two categories of fats are saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. And the body can make saturated fats and monounsaturated fats, which is where the whole low-fat diet catastrophe came in. Because when food was devoid of any fat, but had a lot of carbs in it, and a lot of refined carbs, for example, refined sugar, what happened was that too much of that actually gets converted into saturated fat in the body. So scientists didn't realize that when they put the low-fat diet into place. So everyone thought, oh, well, that's fine. We can eat carbs until the cows come home. But guess what? Excess carbs are stored as fat. So that's how the body makes saturated fat and also monounsaturated fat. But omega-6 and omega-3 are completely different. We have to get them from our diet. And unfortunately, 95% of the population is deficient in these fats. And that's a huge problem, because without these fats in the brain, specifically, the brain can't function optimally. Now, the question that most people ask me at this point, so I'll preempt both of you. The question is, why are these fats so important? And the reason they're so important is because of the critical role they play in the cell membrane, in the neuronal membrane. So we'll talk about the brain here, but you just need to keep in mind, excuse the pun, that these fats do exactly the same kind of job in the rest of the body as well. It's just that in the brain, their functioning is even more important because of the sophistication and sensitivity to how the neurons communicate with each other.
Okay.
So if you can imagine a cell membrane, that cell membrane needs to be extremely flexible and malleable to be able to communicate optimally with its neighbor, and to be able to send the electrical impulse, the electrochemical impulse that neurons communicate with, to the next neuron really quickly and really efficiently. If the cell membrane is made up of lots of saturated fats, then it's less flexible, it's less malleable, it's less able to respond very quickly. And so the message doesn't get to the next neuron and the next one and the next one as efficiently. So those omega-3 and omega-6 fats are very, very specific in the molecular structure. That molecular structure will determine how efficiently the neuronal membranes will function. And from that, everything else stems. Because it's not just the neurons that need that correct mix of fats. It's also the actual organelles inside the cells, like the mitochondria, and everything else that lives inside the cells. It also needs a layer of fat to be able to keep it intact. So those essential fats are critical for brain function. When we speak about what they do in the body, they do an enormous amount of things in the body as well. Immunity, metabolism, blood pressure, growth and development. The list goes on and on. And interestingly, you know, when I love the name of your podcast, I think it is the funniest and most just unique and cute name. You know, when we speak about weight loss, without these essential fats, we have two problems. These fats help the genes that switch on fat burning to be switched on, and they talk to the genes that organize fat storage and turn them off. So if you think about those two things, those essential fats make sure that your metabolism kicks up and works really efficiently, and that you don't store fat as efficiently. So when people start consuming these correct fats, they suddenly have more energy, number one, because their mitochondria is now functioning optimally. Their metabolism is working faster. It deals with cravings, because your cravings are reduced when you've got the right amount of these fats. And also you don't store fat as efficiently. So the function of these fats, I came upon them and their function in the body kind of by accident, because I was looking at their functioning in the brain. And I thought, wow, we need these in our brain. And then I realized when I looked at more and more of the research, we need them everywhere. It's just that their lack in the brain is very, very noticeable when people look at brain function and brain development. But really, we need them everywhere. And as I said, 95% of the population is deficient in these fats and oils. So that's a huge challenge, because most of the fats that are available to us, you know, in those golden aisles at the supermarkets, Most of those fats are unfortunately omega-6 fats, which are good if they're not processed, but the ones in the golden isles are processed harshly. And when those oils are processed, they are unfortunately filled with trans fats and other damaging fats. So you're getting the omega-6 you need, but you're also getting damaged fats, and that you're not getting the omega-3 that you need to go with the omega-6, because the ratio between these two essential fats is critically important. We need more of the omega-3 than the omega-6, because the omega-3 is more involved in our metabolically active organs, like our brain, our heart, our adrenal glands, and our reproductive organs. And omega-6 has other roles to play, but because of its molecular structure, it's not as active in those other metabolically active organs. Yeah. So just to go back for a moment, what most people have in their diets today is lots and lots of omega-6, because that is used for fried food. Mm-hmm. It's used, for salad dressings. It's used for making, biscuits and cakes, because that's what people have gotten used to using. And people have not enough omega-3. So it's a complex conversation. When I give a lecture on fats and oils, it takes over 3 hours.
Wow.
So I'm giving you the Cliff's Notes here, just the bare summary. But it's extremely important for people to understand that these essential fats are critical for us to thrive.
So what are some examples of omega-3?
Okay. Terry, there's some great examples of omega-3. Flax seeds are high in omega-3, as are chia seeds, and green leafy vegetables are also high in omega-3. Okay. These are the plant forms of omega-3. When most people speak about omega-3, they speak about fish oil.
Yes.
And fish oil contains DHA and EPA, which, if you can think about it this way, they are derivatives of the plant-based forms. So the body gets the plant-based forms and then converts them into DHA and EPA. Or if you eat cold water fish, or you swallow fish oil tablets, you get the DHA and the EPA directly. But it is not a good choice to do that, because that fish oil has to be processed at very, very high temperatures to be able to get the heavy metals, the PCBs, all the other toxins that the fish now contain out of them. And the best and the cheapest way to get those toxins out of the fish oil is to heat that oil up to a very high temperature. But this is the sticky part with omega-6 and omega-3 oils. They do not like light, heat, and oxygen. So the minute they're exposed to those elements, they start degrading, and then they will have things like trans fats and polymerized fats and cyclized fats inside them. So when people swallow fish oil, they're not aware of the fact that although the fish oil manufacturer will say on the bottle, triple refined, and the user will think, phew, that's great, nothing bad in it. They don't realize that sneakily, unfortunately, those products now contain other damaged compounds because of the harsh processing. Wow. So that's a little bit complicated for people to get their head around. But the bottom line is this: if you consume enough of the plant-based forms of omega-3 and omega-6, which I'll say where they're found in a moment, if you can consume enough of those plant-based forms and you have enough vitamin C, B3, B6, zinc, and magnesium in your diet, then the body naturally knows how much of that plant-based form to convert into the DHA and the EPA. It will do it automatically. It's been doing it since the beginning of time, and it can still do that. But fish oil manufacturers tell people, oh no, it can't do that. It only does it at between 2% and 5%. But that's actually the percentage that the body wants to make in each go, if I can put it that way, because then it's fresh and it uses it where it needs to use it. If anybody that's listening, and maybe either of you have ever gone into hospital, what they now ask people is, are you on any supplements? Are any of them maybe fish oil? And if that's the case, it's a problem, because if people are on fish oil, they can bleed out. Because it makes your blood so thin because they've got too much DHA and EPA in them. But if you have plant forms, then your body knows how much to make and how much, is required. So that's quite a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, I'm thinking because we probably over supplement, and I know I take, quite a bit of fish oil every day. So I'm just going to, after we get through, run over to the cabinet and throw that in the trash and be done with that.
Well, but we also, if we do smoothies and we try to do more of them, we do add flaxseed and chia and spinach or kale.
And I think to reinforce your message, I don't want to jump ahead of you, but this just gets back to the fact that we just talked about wanting to take a pill to cure things. So we want to take a pill to cure all of our deficiencies in our poor eating habits. And so instead, let's get back to the basics and eat a good, well-rounded diet. And, the other thing I think that really helps is choosing an app to track this stuff for you. And I'll let you comment on this, but there's an app that you can put all this in that'll tell you the micronutrients. And the one that we use actually has at the bottom, there's like 4 or 5 different combinations. The omega-3 and omega-6 just happens to be one, and it's got a little dial that'll tell you too much 3, too much 6, and it tries to put you right in the middle.
I think, there are a few things just to mention there, Roy. I think we do actually need to supplement.
Oh, do we?
Omega-3 and omega-6, we do. And I discovered the supplement that I recommend to people and that we've been using for 25 years ago. So it's a supplement that combines the plant forms of omega-3 and omega-6 in the right ratio. That's in the favor of 2 to 1, favor of omega-3. But it's actually processed in a factory that Michael actually went and had a look at that makes sure that light, heat, and oxygen don't damage the oils. So in other words, it's made with health in mind, not profit in mind.
Right.
And it's a fantastic product, and I recommend it to people. When I stand in front of an audience or I do a workshop, I actually get them to taste this product. So I do believe in supplementation, but evidence-based supplementation. Yeah. And because I know how to read labels, I know what's a good product and what isn't, and also how it's made, specifically the fats and oils. So that is definitely important. As far as an app goes, if people find that an app supports them in terms of their micronutrients and macronutrients and how much they're consuming, then I think it's a wonderful tool to use. But if you don't have time and you're not bothered to do that, when you eat a plant-based diet, which I know we'll touch on in a little while again, Roy, when we eat mostly a plant-based diet, you know what is our cue? Our cue is how we feel. If we're satisfied after a meal, if we have enough energy, to get through a day and we feel sharp and clear, if our weight is the weight that we want it to be, and if the way we're eating is sustainable, then that's a way to know that you're getting all your micronutrients and your macronutrients. So an app can help you to get to that place, but maybe it isn't the thing to rely on forever.
Yeah.
Because the way we feel physically and mentally should be the best guide to how well we are feeding ourselves and moving and meditating and supporting ourselves in other ways.
Yeah.
I think, technology can definitely support us, but I think relying on technology, because I know somebody, for example, who's got this little thing that she puts on her arm, and it will tell her when her body battery is running low. So she'll wake up in the morning and she'll say, I obviously didn't sleep well because my body battery isn't well. And I'll say to her, but how do you feel like you slept? How do you feel? This person can no longer distinguish between how she really feels and what her little device is telling her. So I just warn people, that's just the psychology of technology, that it can sometimes override our own common sense. And that's something that we need to guard against. Just for example, in winter, we want to eat more comforting foods that would seem to be more fattening. But then when summer comes, we drop those foods and we may drop a kilo or 2, and that's perfectly fine as well. Yeah. So I think we just need to keep the balance there between, is technology serving us or how do we actually feel? Because I think ultimately that's the thing that really matters the most.
Yeah. So back to the omega-3s and the plant-based supplement you were talking about. Is that easy to find? Is that something or do we have to look hard for it, or how could we acquire that?
What is it?
It's not hard to find at all. You'll find it at any whole food store or any Sprouts store. I hope I'm using that name correctly.
Yep.
I think there is a Sprouts in
Yes.
America.
Yes.
And it'll be in the refrigerated section. So it will
Okay.
be in the fridge. It'll be kept cold. It's in a dark box. It's in a dark bottle. And it's nitrogen flushed, which means that nitrogen is put into the bottle before the oil is put into it. So there's no oxidation that happens to that product at all. And it's a product that I'm very happy to recommend. And I'll give you the details so you can put them in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Yeah, because we need to. If this fish oil is probably not suiting us, but may actually be damaging to us, we need to quit doing that. We'll switch over to this. So good point. Anyway, sorry. Before we move too far from this, too, I wanted to talk about the fats, the low fat, because my career has mostly been dealing with the elderly in some manner. And so, we had Alzheimer's has gone off the scale. I think we read the other day 6 million Americans are suffering from some form.
Yeah.
And there was a study. It was one person. It's not a study. One person tried this. They ended up doing some longitudinal studies that I haven't really heard the results. It hasn't been that long though since this happened. But anyway, so there's a test for Alzheimer's. It's the clock test basically. You draw a circle on a piece of paper. The person you are testing is supposed to number 1 through 12 around the outer parts. And typically what you will see with Alzheimer's patients is the numbers will be either backwards, they'll be crazy. This one person that we're talking about in Florida, all of his numbers were all down around the 6. Everything was just all piled down there. So his wife, I don't remember the backstory, but somehow she started feeding him 1 tablespoonful of coconut oil 3 times a day. Now you have to be careful because it's high caloric, but he had other issues, so they did it. And within about 6 weeks, he was able to get pretty dang close with this clock face. And so anyway, made me think, was this low fat craze that we had in the 70s and in the 80s some root cause of what we're seeing now? And I read some research, and it feels like that it was, nobody can be totally conclusive, but I think that they felt evidentiary-wise that there's a pretty good linkage between that. I don't want to take up a lot of time talking about that, but I feel like it's important because it gets back to this thing. Decisions that we make today can catch up with us in 20, 30, 40 years in ways that we really never thought possible.
Absolutely, Roy, and it's a very good point, and I'm glad you brought this up because the truth of the matter is a brain that is deprived of the right kinds of fat will end up becoming unable to function optimally. So the low-fat diet was put into place by researchers who didn't understand the complexity of fats and oils in the diet, which is the most complex aspect of nutrition. We can speak to the fact that the coconut oil helped because obviously his brain was now incapable of using carbohydrates as a source of energy, which is the brain's natural and preferred source of energy. But if the neurons become incapable of using that form of energy, the body can actually convert saturated fat from, for example, coconut oil into something called ketones, which the brain can use as a source of energy. So this is something that researchers are getting more involved in to find out if that actually works for the brain that is not functioning well, like a dementia brain. And they're finding that it is the case. It seems to be the tendency, but it's only when the brain becomes incapable of using carbohydrates that seems to be useful, or otherwise, if the whole body goes into ketogenesis, then the brain is forced to use ketones as a form of energy. Whether that's sustainable or not, there is no evidence to support that. Yeah. Whether it's good for the body long-term, some danger points there as well. Yeah. So yes, helpful when the brain is already degraded, not as a lifetime sustainable option.
Okay. Yeah, and look, I don't want to derail you if you're kind of, going in order, but that kind of transitions nicely into the keto and the ketogenics, and then
paleo, and
and then also plant-based. It's like there's so much stuff swirling out there, and I'll just keep it brief, but give you my story. A few years ago, I didn't really do strict keto. I just tried to really fight to keep my carbs under about 40 a day. 40 to 60 was the range that my doctor had told me to stay in. And, I had pretty good luck with it, but then after a while, and I never really got into the ketogenesis part, but after a while I heard, bad things that so much protein can be hard on you. And the other thing I think it was worth mentioning is that it's not like a protein fest, just eat all you want, because you have to watch your limits, because from what I've heard, the body is smart enough after a while, if it doesn't have the carbs, that it will start turning proteins into glucose or, something like that. Then that makes it hard on your organs as well. So again, we just get back to, all this stuff that's out there. We are doing more plant-based, which means for us, we can still eat meat. We just limit that meat and try to, make sure we're getting proteins from our beans and things like that. Yeah. And, then we heard a story about us being omnivores, like the carnivores have sharp teeth and a shorter or longer digestive system. True plant-based animals have different teeth and either the longer or shorter. So we are truly, from what I've heard, we're truly somewhere in the middle. But again, it's there's so much information on the keto. There's information on both sides. So help us sort that. Help sort all this stuff out.
It's a really interesting thing, because the longer that I've been in this field, the more I see, all these different dietary protocols come out, and people swear this is the one for me and this is the one for me. So I'm always curious, firstly, about the kind of personality that looks at this diet and goes, okay, this one's going to work. So we can unpack that a little bit later maybe. But the bottom line is this: the only evidence-based diet that has been examined in enough detail and depth to show its long-term sustainable efficacy in terms of health, physical and mental, is the Mediterranean diet. That's the only diet that has been studied. Now, that's a diet that is very much plant-based, and then with meat on top of it. Okay, so that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind with all these different approaches, and for example, we can take keto and paleo as the examples, they're cutting out major food groups. So what some people have done, they've tweaked them to make them a little bit better in some ways. But let's take paleo first, for example. The paleo people will tell you that we used to live on meat in the olden days when we ran across the savannah and killed animals with glee and reckless abandon. The truth of the matter is that that's not the case. Right. We actually used to hunt animals in small groups, not all the time, because hunting animals was hard work and it also was dangerous. If someone got hurt, they didn't quickly have a penicillin injection to give them and say, hey, mate, you're right now. Right. So hunting wasn't this glorified, wonderful activity that was continuously engaged in. We did eat meat, which is why we've evolved to need B12 and iron and zinc, which comes from animal products. But we did not live on them continuously. Yeah. Maybe some groups of people did, but then they were deficient in many nutrients that they weren't consuming at that point in time. So, the paleo people will cherry pick research to support their view, but it isn't supported long-term with solid, robust evidence. Yeah. The second thing about a ketogenic diet, once again, the focus is on fat. A lot of it's saturated fat. Unless it's tweaked, it doesn't contain essential fats. And, we've just discussed how essential the essential fats are, because we have to get them from our diet. Our body can't make them. So that's the first thing about the ketogenic diet. The second thing about the ketogenic diet is that it does put extra stress on the body's organs. And that is just because it's not a natural way for us to eat. Whenever we eat in a way that isn't natural, there will be some kind of fallout from a physiological perspective, because the body has to now adjust itself. Things like gluconeogenesis, ketogenesis, all these things have to be adjusted. So now the body has to work differently. So under certain circumstances, the ketogenic diet is useful for type 2 diabetes and for cognitive decline. Those are the two top of mind ones.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the population, if you can't lose weight following mostly a Mediterranean style diet, then you're going to be compromising your body in some way, and also brain function. Because the Mediterranean diet, as I said, has also been studied in relation to mental health. And it's very robust that kind of diet really supports mental well-being. So that's just those two diets.
Yeah.
Another one that a lot of people are now trying and people are talking a lot about is intermittent fasting.
Yes.
Now, intermittent fasting is interesting because there's more of a focus on when not to eat versus what to eat. Once again, throwing the baby away with the bathwater in a sense, because if your focus is entirely on when not to eat and you're eating whatever in the time that you can eat,
Right.
you're still not going to be getting the nutrients that you need.
Right.
So some people have tweaked that diet. And I suppose in a sense, I'm one of those people, because I stop eating at 7 o'clock at night latest, and then I only eat at 7 o'clock the next morning or a little later. So that gives me a good 12 hours of not eating. And that is probably normal, considering the way we evolved. Some people want to stretch that to 14 or 15 hours. I say that's fine. However, you also have to be considering what you're eating. And if you're very stressed, it can actually add more stress to your life, because when your body registers that it's hungry, it's actually your brain registering, you actually increase cortisol. And we don't want to be doing that, because cortisol does a lot of negative things in the body and brain. So I always suggest to people, if they're looking at doing intermittent fasting, do it overnight for the 12 hours, because that gives your gut a wonderful break, which it needs from constantly working. But try not to stretch it much longer than that if you're experiencing chronic stress.
Okay.
So that's a little summary of the main diets and their pitfalls.
And that's what we did intermittent fasting, where we would eat at 12 p.m. We wouldn't eat in the morning. We would eat at 12 p.m., 7 p.m., and then we wouldn't eat again until 12 p.m. the next day. So 12 and 7.
The thing about that, though, is breakfast is, one of my meals that I really like. And the other thing that we started kind of tweaking that was doing, like a smoothie in the morning, and, with the kale or spinach, and then
And
protein
flax.
powder, the flaxseed, and, it's a healthy one. But I just feel like I need something in the morning. So,
Well, you're not unusual, because it is basically a fast that your body has been under all night,
Yeah.
and for most people, blood glucose dips in the morning. And when your blood glucose dips, it sends a signal. Your brain says, hold on a second, food is required.
Yeah.
You have been without food for a long time. We need to get blood glucose up. So that feeling, partly habit, but very much based on the physiology that you experience when you get up in the morning. So what are you doing now? How have you adjusted that? Are you having your smoothie and then eating at 12?
yes. Yeah. Typically that's, it's been a rough couple weeks.
Yeah.
And it seems like we always have these rough
Don't ask
spells.
what we're doing, really. Don't do it.
Look, I think...
But anyway, no, I was just going to say that, that I think what I would like to do is have that smoothie in the morning, eat at 12, eat at 5, 6, or 7, and then not eat again till the next morning. Because I think it's one of my downfalls is not only the food I eat, but wanting to eat at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and then go to bed.
Snacks.
And eating bad
Snacks.
stuff at 9 or 10 at night.
Mm-hmm.
Look, there are a few things just to comment on that. The first thing is that a lot of people want to snack in the evening, and that becomes a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to work on not doing that. However, when your blood glucose is more stable and you have enough of the essential fats, your cravings will reduce.
Okay.
Because they've done some research, and I know it's only rodent research, but it's very optimistic in relation to, if we can translate it, when rats are deprived of essential fats, they need more sweet foods in their diet. They crave more sweet foods.
Yeah.
But when they've got enough essential fatty acids, they don't. So that's the one thing to keep in mind. So that may shift when you start consuming the right essential fats, because you won't have your blood glucose will be more stable firstly, and your cravings will be reduced. The second thing that you mentioned, laughingly about don't ask what we're doing now. I think one of the things that happens to people, and I see it and it disturbs me, is because, they start a particular way of eating and then they want to stick to that all the time. And when they don't, they get really distressed and they go back to the way they used to eat. And I always encourage people to don't do that. Just look at how far you've come. Yeah. And you may have a day or a week or 10 days where things just go pear-shaped. We all know that life can do that to us. The longer we live, the more we are aware of that.
Yes, gosh.
And we just have to have some compassion and some kindness, know. So I'm not eating the way I'm really wanting to eat, but I'm getting back to it. And these are all the things that I've already included that are different and better, and pat on the back for me. I see a lot of people that really are too hard on themselves, and so that's just a thought.
Yeah, because you just kind of want to throw up your hands and say, okay, well, I haven't eaten how I wanted to for a week, 2 weeks, whatever, and then it's like, I can't do it. I can't sustain it.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, I used to have a lot of willpower, but it seems like older age. I don't know if it's because you just the way that you've survived, and it's like I deserve it, or it's a reward. But it's like, man, I used to have a lot of willpower and could stay away from that stuff, and now, I mean, not so much. It doesn't even take bamboo shoots under the fingernail before I start like, hey, I'll have that candy bar for sure.
It's a really good point, Roy, because I think one of the reasons people snack at night is because of something called decision fatigue. And decision fatigue is something that happens in the brain as the day progresses. So, you mentioned willpower. There's actually quite a lot of interesting research about willpower and decision fatigue. So it's like when you wake up in the morning, you've got a lot of willpower. So I always suggest to people, if you want to start a new habit, start it in the morning, because your brain is still fresh. No. As the day progresses, your brain loses energy and becomes less capable of making decisions that serve you. So, for example, the prefrontal cortex is like the CEO of the brain, and it's the one in charge. But it runs out of energy very much earlier in the day than the rest of the brain, because it doesn't have any automatic workarounds. And this is the inhibitory part of the brain. This is the brain that will say, Roy, don't open that cupboard because what's in there isn't good for you. But by 8 o'clock at night, it's offline. It's not functioning. So then the brain does something interesting. It does one of two things, in fact. It does a knee-jerk activity or behavior. So that's just habitual. Just does it because it's a habit. So that's probably what's happening to you. The other thing it does nothing. It just stops. And that happens in certain circumstances where cognitive capacity is required, but not in situations where a habit is being, fulfilled. So that's something to keep in mind. You're calling it willpower, but it's actually something to do with the brain running out of energy, because this is not just the most sophisticated part of the brain, the PFC, it's also the most energy demanding part of the brain. So it runs out of energy earlier in the day. Okay. So there are a few things you can do. You can actually get rid of everything that's in that cupboard that's bad and replace it with some things that still taste really yummy with the right mouthfeel. So they must have fat in them, they must have some sweetness in them, and they must have a bit of protein in them. Because if you can fulfill that, your mouthfeel is still satisfied, but psychologically you're not eating the bad stuff anymore. Right. And then slowly over time you can wean yourself from even that. But having the bad cupboard at 9 p.m. at night is not a good...
No, it's definitely not. Oh. Well, we took a little break there. Took a little.
So much for our lightning fast.
No, it's I think it's our.
We're okay.
I'm holding that we're okay because I can still see you. We're gonna just talk amongst ourselves for just a minute here and give Delia a chance to come back. There she went off. Maybe
Okay.
she'll come back.
Well,
Well, that's good to know. So we need to. We're gonna when we get offline, we're gonna sit down and restructure and.
We're going to clean out the pantry.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but we need to. I just gonna look at some things that we do and maybe try to rearrange again something that's easier. We need to really check these. This omega-3 and omega-6
oh my
thing out.
gosh, I want to
get rid of our.
I definitely want to get that. Oh,
There
Delia,
she is.
yay.
Something happened.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. We were just talking amongst ourselves, and there you are. Well, so just one more thing. We're running way long, I know, and I appreciate your time. You've just
May
been
have
so
to have you on
enlightening.
again and
Yeah,
just
we
do
will.
this in sections.
But just like for somebody like myself, I guess, with type 2 diabetic and with it being harder to control or get it to where I need it to be, may be better to make just a little bit of a shift to the keto for a while in order to get that down and then start transitioning back to more of the Mediterranean diet. Would that be a sensible plan?
I think the first thing that I would do is just suggest you get the right essential fatty acids. So
Okay.
make sure you get the product and you start using that every day.
Okay.
If you feel a little bit nauseous in the beginning, just cut back a little bit because the liver still needs to incorporate all those fat molecules to be able to help it function optimally. So you can chat to me about that and I'll support you through that phase.
Okay.
The second thing to keep in mind is just cut back on the starches. So I know that starches are very satisfying and they give us good mouthfeel, but just cut back on the starches a little bit, especially the white starches. So don't have rice, don't have white potatoes, but rather have some millet or have some quinoa and have sweet potatoes.
Okay.
And then make up the bulk of your food with things like broccoli, things like cauliflower, green leaves, lots of lovely dressings, nuts and seeds. In that way, you'll be getting much more of the fats
Yeah.
with your diet. And when you do have meat, have it with lots of greens as well.
Yeah.
Or if you have some eggs, have it with lots of greens. Try and focus more on that. If you go towards the ketogenic, then what happens is you're going to get many more saturated fats.
Okay.
And the more
That's right.
saturated fats you eat, the more essential fats you've got to eat. So let's just focus on the essential fats for the next couple of weeks. If you do that, you'll find your cravings will definitely go down. Your blood glucose will become more stable.
Okay.
There are a few things that may happen. You may suddenly feel that you've actually got some more energy. So don't take the oil at night. Rather take it, with your smoothie and for lunch.
Okay.
And then you may just feel like you actually want to exercise a little bit more.
Okay.
And you're thinking a little bit more clearly. I also say to people that they just need to keep in mind that those fats work from the inside out. So your brain, your heart, your digestive system, your liver, your lungs, all of those organs, your adrenal glands, reproductive organs, they're going to get those essential fats first, and they're going to work their way out to your skin. So when your skin starts feeling smooth and it starts feeling well lubricated and moist, and you don't need anything to keep your skin moist, then you've got those fats throughout your whole body. But that can happen in 18 months to 3 years. So let's not jump ahead.
Oh, wow.
It's just that it's a process.
Yeah.
That if you just think about, we've got all these trillions and trillions of cells.
Yeah.
All of those little membranes need to now become full of these good fats.
Okay, awesome. And I don't want to get Michael in trouble, but when we were showing him around town, I have to say that we said, look, you need to try some desserts, and he actually said, that's fine. You need to live it up right now, because when you talk to Delia and when she gets over here, especially, things are going to be changing for you a whole lot. So
He did, and he said you and I were going to be, we were going to be in cahoots.
so
Look, I mean, he mustn't act like he's deprived. I make the best chocolate ice cream
oh my gosh.
with salted peanut butter stirred into it. And I make a mean chocolate mousse as well.
Ooh, that sounds good.
And he's not a deprived person in any way, shape, or form, but I've just learned to tweak it. So, Terry, I'm going to be very excited to get into the kitchen and we can do fun stuff together.
I am so there. I'm there already.
Well, Delia, we appreciate your time. I know we've ran way long, but it's just such a good conversation, and it's just so many good facts that trying to get all this sorted out with all the information that's out there. Like you said, you can find research to support just about anything, but you got to take the whole body of research.
You can't just pick and choose.
Yeah, you got to take everything. So it's good to know. We're gonna go get this the omegas tomorrow, and we'll get on that and see.
Yes.
Because I would definitely love to be thinking clear and love to have more energy. That's for sure.
Gosh.
That'll make me happy.
Seriously.
Well, it's waiting for you. Trust me, it will come.
Okay. All right. Well, before we go, do a couple things for me. First off, what is a habit or a tool that you use every day, something that you feel adds a lot of value to your life, either personal or professional?
That's a really good question. I think there's certain things that I do every day that have become habits. Okay. One of them is that I never look at my email or social media before I've had my breakfast.
Okay.
So for me, with Michael being, in Austin now, I say good morning to him because it's his afternoon.
Yeah.
And then I'll send him a screenshot of how chilly it is here. And then he'll send me a screenshot of how chilly it is there. But generally speaking, I don't actually look at so I don't look at any email, nothing.
No
so
phone.
I don't get my brain busy thinking about other stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do is I go for a walk at 4:00 every day, most days. It's about a 45-minute walk. I get my blood nicely up. And I don't listen to podcasts or anything else. I just walk and have like a silent meditation. That's something that I also do. So those are two things. And I think some of the things that I now do have become habits, but I don't think of them as habits anymore. So I can't really think of anything else that I do. That's a good question.
Well, we're good habit collectors anyway, but then, also we just like to put things out there that may resonate with people. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to try that because, I usually listen to music. Well, if it's me and Terry, we talk, but if it's just me, I usually have music or a podcast going. So I think that may be something I could tweak for myself, is to just use that for some meditation and, just listen to nature and give my brain a break. That would definitely
and do your meditation there. Yeah. And we have to wrangle the dogs. Apparently they're wanting to get in on this one.
Actually, I posted on my Instagram today about that thing about silence and the brain. But my mum's just mentioned to me water. That's something else that I make a habit of having every single day.
Oh, yes.
And so sometimes what I do when I've got work to do and I've got a specific project that I'm busy with, I'll set my timer, not my phone timer because my phone is then off. I'll set an old-fashioned timer to 50 minutes and I'll work solidly for 50 minutes. And then for 10 minutes, I'll take a break.
Yeah.
Then I'll come back and I'll set it for another 50 minutes. And that's how I get through projects that really need focus and concentration. So that's another habit.
Yeah, I like that one. I've heard that
too.
before. That way you can set that block out. It's not like you're saying, hey, I'm never going to answer my cell phone or my emails, but you've got a certain 10-minute window to do that, and that way you can focus on other stuff. Yeah, I do like that.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll go check out the blog because they, the other thing about losing the noise is that's where our creative spot is, when we just cannot have to be thinking about problems, solving problems, or things, when we can just
thrown at you,
be with ourselves for a few minutes.
Absolutely. That's part of the time that the prefrontal cortex can actually access all of our knowledge and our skills to come up with creative solutions. We're giving it a break. We're not giving it information that it's got to sort through. It then goes internally to find that creativity, which is a fantastic point. Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Well, good enough. Terry, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned the names of your books. You want to go ahead and do that? The Feed Your Brain.
Thank you, Terry. Mm-hmm. Yes. The first book is called Feed Your Brain, 7 Steps to a Lighter, Brighter You. And it does have some recipes in it, but it's basically the science of feeding your brain.
Okay.
So when people really want to know how it works, that's the book that they buy. My second book takes that science into my kitchen, and that's called Feed Your Brain, the Cookbook. Okay. So that's the book that's got the decadent chocolate ice cream and sauce and the desserts. And, I use oils responsibly in that book without heating them, and I teach people how to do that. So those are the two books. Thanks for asking, Terry.
Oh, awesome.
Yep, you bet. So,
Yes.
tell people how they can reach out, and how they could work with. Who do you work with? What can you do to help them? And of course, how they can reach out and get a hold of you.
People can find me at my blog, which is www.lby.life, which stands for lighter, brighter, you.life. They can find me on Instagram under the same name, and on Facebook under the same name, and on LinkedIn as Dr. Delia McCabe. They can also go to my blog and go and opt into my newsletter that I send out every month or so about all sorts of different interesting things that I come across from a cognitive and nutritional perspective. And that way they can stay in communication with me. And I'm always giving little gifts like my favorite recipes or a little video about how to manage stress. So they get a lot of fun stuff when they subscribe.
Okay, awesome. We'll go check that out. I want to be a subscriber.
Yeah, we didn't even get to touch on stress. I was so interested to talk about that too, but
Well,
maybe
we're-
we'll do it again.
We're
Talking about that next time.
We're holding that back for episode number 2.
That's right.
we're gonna get her to promise to come back and talk to us again. That way we could
Yes.
talk about female stress. I think that was the one that. But this other was interesting too. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Y'all go check Dr. Delia out and see what she has to say. Sign up for the blog. It's a lot of great information, and we appreciate it very much. Got some things we're going to work on this week. Already talked about while you were gone. We talked about we're going
Yes, we did.
have to get together after this call, get our planning down, and get on a good plane. All right.
Fantastic.
So
Thank you so much for the invite. I
You
really
bet.
appreciate it.
You
It was
bet.
lovely to chat to you.
Anytime.
Yes,
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
So that's going to do it for us. Again, I'm your host, Roy.
I'm Terry.
And you can find us at www.feedingfatty.com. We're on all the major podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify, all the major social media platforms. Probably spend more time on Instagram than any. So please reach out if you're a professional in this area. If you have a good story to tell, reach out. We'd love to hear it and get you on a future episode. There will be a video of this interview that goes up when it goes live as well. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of your health.